Hi everyone. In this unit, we've been talking about different economic indicators and ways in which they diagnose whether or not the economy is healthy or unhealthy. In today's lesson, we want to talk about, all right, if the economy's not doing so well, or if it's like too overheated, what are some solutions to fix those problems? So in our next two lessons, we're going to talk about two different ways in which that happens. In this lesson, we're going to talk about fiscal policy. So make sure you're in your interactive notebook and you're following along. Let's go ahead and get started. We're on page 6 of your interactive notebook. And again, today we're talking about fiscal policy. I first want to start off with a little bit of a warning. Fiscal, and we'll talk about in the next lesson, monetary policy, they sound like these big, scary economic terms, which sometimes they can be, but on the most part, once we break them down, they're not as scary as they sound. So take a deep breath and let's dive in. Let's start off with our essential question. What can the President and Congress do to help stabilize the economy? Fiscal policy, first and foremost, is a government policy regarding spending and taxation that are meant to help improve or maintain the economy. When I say spending here, I mean government spending and I mean government taxation. These decisions can have a huge impact on the way in which the economy functions. So who's going to be making these fiscal policy decisions? Like I said, it's government, but it's a certain part of government. And as we saw in the essential question, it's going to be the president as well as Congress. So the president and or his cabinet and Congress, which is made up of the House of Representatives and the Senate. So those are the only entities that are in charge of fiscal policy. The Supreme Court has no rule on it. The Federal Reserve, no other branch of government except for the president and Congress can rule over fiscal policy. What are our goals of fiscal policy? 3 big goals. We want to lower unemployment or keep it low. Remember, our sweet spot is about 4 to 6%. We want to keep stable prices and generally low inflation. Again, when we talked about inflation, that creeping inflation is the kind that we like, the kind that we're okay with. And then lastly, we want to maintain economic growth and have high GDP and production, but not too high because we don't want inflation to go out of control and we don't want to keep expanding. Remember, we want that business cycle to keep humming along, up and down, up and down, up and down. So fiscal policy in the economy, the government can help to increase or decrease the spending in the economy. We have 2 types of fiscal policies. We have expansionary fiscal policies, which are meant to increase the output of the economy. And then we have contractionary fiscal policies, which are meant to decrease the output in the economy. And again, when you want to think about this, think about expanding. When we expand something, we get bigger. When we contract something, we make it get smaller. So expanding is going to, as it says, increase that output. Contracting is going to slow it down or shrink it, as we sometimes say. The nice thing about these different policies, once you know one, the other is the exact opposite. So my biggest suggestion is get one down and then you know, okay, just flip it on the other side or think about the opposite. An expansionary fiscal policy is going to be used during a contraction or quite possibly a recession or depression. The government decides to do 2 things. They're going to decrease taxes and or they're going to increase their government spending. The goal here is to get more money into citizens' pockets. Again, decreasing taxes. You're not going to have to pay as many taxes, so the money that you're not paying the government in taxes, you can go out and spend on stuff. Increased in government spending, they're going to increase their spending in different government-funded projects. So building more roads and bridges, things like that. It's got to be financed by somebody. They're going to pay the workers, they're going to pay the project, and then that money is going to kind of trickle down. And then those workers who are now getting paid can go out and buy stuff. And so this is meant to stimulate growth in the economy because, again, we're trying to combat that contraction or the recession. The flip side of this is going to be our contractionary fiscal policy, and this is going to be used during a period of expansion or excessive inflation, something where growth has just gotten way too much. The government's going to do the exact opposite. They're going to increase taxes and decrease their government spending because, again, here the goal is to kind of not physically take money away from people, but kind of make it less available to them so that they can't spend as much. They have to hold on to their money a little bit more. And again, you might be thinking to yourself, well, why would we want to stop expanding? I always like to use the example here of, someone who likes to eat. I'm a foodie. I love to eat, but there is a point where you have to realize I have to stop eating because it's not good for my health. It's not good for my waistline. I'm going to have a stomach ache. I'm not going to feel well. Using this as an analogy for, economic spending and GDP, yes, we want to keep growing our economy to keep it humming along, but with GDP growth and with expansion, that means prices are also going to expand. So we don't necessarily want that. We don't want inflation. So again, that's why it's really important that the business cycle keeps up and down, up and down, up and down. Contractions, again, are okay, just as long as we don't get stuck in them. All right, so again, this is a way to shrink the economy, but it's not like we want to do this forever. It's just a short-term period, because then when we're out of this period, we might go into an expansionary fiscal policy. So let's go through a couple scenarios, and then you'll have a little quiz here, and then we'll test your knowledge to see how well you were paying attention. So let's say that most people in this scenario, most people are employed, people are spending more money than ever before, they're buying very high-priced goods. Many retailers have found that they can charge higher prices because people have money and they're willing to spend it. So first think about what's the problem, and then what's our solution to fix that problem. So what's our problem here? Our problem is high inflation. They have lots of money. It's kind of that idea that everybody's a little bit more rich, so they can go out and spend things. So what's our solution? Our solution here is to decrease government spending and increase taxes, or impose a contractionary fiscal policy. Again, slow down the economy. Our next scenario. By late 1979, a recession had begun. During this time, orders for goods were declining and inventories increased. Many people are searching for work. So what is our problem here? Our problem is that we have cyclical unemployment and possibly a recession. So what's our solution? How are we going to combat this recession? We're going to increase government spending and decrease taxes, or implement an expansionary fiscal policy. Our next scenario, the United States is in a deep depression that is greater than the Great One of the 1930s. What's our problem? Problem is that we're in a depression. What's the solution? Just like before, we're going to increase government spending and decrease our taxes, or implement an expansionary fiscal policy. Hudson Votech students, as well as most students around the country, are being paid high wages at fast food restaurants. Many of these students are willing to pay high prices for cars, junk food, stereos, you name it. What's our problem? So we're willing to pay for things that are high prices, so we have another problem of inflation. What's our solution? We need that contractionary fiscal policy. We're going to decrease government spending and increase taxes. All right, our last scenario. During the last 6 months, the Consumer Price Index, or the CPI, has increased by 10%. Remember, the Consumer Price Index measures inflation. So what's our problem here? We have high inflation again. So again, what's our solution? Our solution is to decrease government spending and increase taxes. Or again, we want to contract it. So again, these are different policies that go into helping expanding the economy or contracting the economy, or shrinking it, as we say sometimes. In our next lesson, we're going to talk about monetary policy, which has similar goals, but it's run by a different group. So make sure all of this is in your interactive notebook, and thanks for watching.